the question always comes, how do you get from aviation to financial services? What I would say is don't wait for advice to come to you. Whenever things don't blow up, you don't really notice risk management. In a lot of instances, risk is seen as a cost, and you can also get better at saying no to things or saying not right now. The most overlooked skill I think that people early in their career sort of don't tap into is.
And welcome to my podcast, where I dive deep into the journeys of professionals from various industries. Today, I have a special guest who has made significant progress in his field. We'll explore his career path, the challenges he's faced, and the insights he's gained along the way. So, whether you're just starting out or looking to make career changes, this conversation is packed with advice and inspiration. Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for joining me today and providing your great experience about your career journey to help professionals and aspiring individuals to gain a better understanding of existing jobs and make more informed decisions about their career journey and career paths. If you could please start by introducing yourself to our audience and letting us know about your career journey and how you ended up in this field, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Parissa. Very happy to be part of the discussion today. So my current job and sort of field of interest is risk management, so specifically risk management in financial services. So I was lucky enough for a number of years before starting my current role to work for some of the major banks and some of the major insurers in Australia before moving to actually work for a regulator, which is somewhat of a different type of career path for some in financial services. But for me, it was a great opportunity to get a better understanding of sort of that intersection of government and business. So essentially my career journey from where I started as an academic for a number of years and was an academic and a researcher in risk management. So specifically my field of study was in aviation risk management, and the question always comes, how do you get from aviation to financial services? And the answer is quite simple because it's really all about critical infrastructure. So what are the sorts of systems and practices and processes in risk management, be them in something like an airport or in a bank, that need to run effectively and run well and have that risk managed in an active way. So the two areas were complementary. When I had the opportunity, when I finished my research and finished my studies, to move across into financial services, it actually came about by luck. It was in a situation through some friends whereby when I was waiting for my PhD thesis to be marked, I was actually able to go and present at a range of different offsite days for teams in financial services and in other areas as well. And off the back of one, the opportunity and the question came up of, well, would you actually like to move out of academia and move across into financial services, which at the time I was very comfortable to take on a new opportunity and to say yes and start something different. So moved from one side to the other side, and I've had a great experience. And I think for me, my career journey has actually been a lot of those instances of actually just saying yes to things. And when those opportunities are presented, focus more on where can I leverage the skills that I've had in my current role or in previous roles into a new challenge, rather than simply doing sort of the same that I've always done. So I've had a career where I've worked through Suncorp, so it's a general insurer and bank, into Commonwealth Bank, and I was lucky enough to be there in a time when there was a lot going on at Commonwealth Bank with their prudential inquiry from APRA on the bank, and also that sort of spun into the Financial Services Royal Commission. Then had the opportunity to move to IAG Insurance, which was another major insurer in Australia, and take some of the lessons that I'd learned from that time during the Royal Commission at Commonwealth Bank across into insurance. Through that, then I had the opportunity to move to the other side of the table, so to move from industry to the regulator. So I currently work at the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, which is essentially focused on resilience and stability of Australian financial services. And yeah, it's been a great journey so far, and always looking for different opportunities and always looking to say yes to those things when they come up.
Right, just I think it would be great if, especially for our younger generation who will be watching this video, I think would be interesting if you could just elaborate on the situations where you said yes. So was it just, did you
just use your instincts to say yes, or like, was there any sort of reasoning, or did you do any sort of research before saying yes to those opportunities?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, and probably something I hadn't reflected on previously. I think in the instances where I was comfortable to move, it was probably really based on the leader that I was working with. So, in a number of those instances, when I did change to a different organization or change to a different team, I really focused on spending time to understand the leader, understand their approach to what they were trying to achieve, where I could learn from them as well was for me a really strong opportunity, and just an openness and respect with the leader. So in all the instances, it wasn't something where I was just immediately jumping into. I of course would sort of do the due diligence to understand what I was getting myself into, but very much pivoting around who is the leader, what's important to them, how do they value their team and support their team as well, and provide those opportunities for the team to progress and learn as well. So in hindsight, it was something that I've been really fortunate to work with some really excellent leaders who I think for me as well, and it's a question that I always ask of candidates now when I'm hiring people into my own team, which is, what do you need from a leader? What actually sets you up for success? And it's interesting. Some people have never heard that question before and have never considered what those sorts of things are and how they would respond to that. But I think on reflection, when you can look at different leaders that you've had, inherently you'll always have some that you will work better with, others that you'll struggle with. So for me, it's really about, obviously, as a team member in those instances, understanding what I needed from a leader and what was effective, but also now leading teams. I really want people in my team having that understanding as well of what they need from me and communicating that.
Great, thank you for that. It would be very helpful if you could also let the audience know what your current job title is and how relevant did you find the education or the qualifications you have in your current role.
Sure. So my current role is Head of Operational Resilience, and specifically in the transformation space at APRA. So essentially what that means is whenever we as the regulator roll out new prudential standards or roll out new guidance, it means a change for industry, but it also means a change for how we regulate. So a lot of the transformation aspect of my role is less about being that subject matter expert and much more about being how I support my business, which in this case is the Australian Prudential Regulator, in working through that change, in understanding what it means for people, in communicating with stakeholders, in supporting that strategy going forward. So a lot of the skills that I leverage is actually all the way back to my research background at university, where previously you would kind of say, well, you can do different change management qualifications or you could do different stakeholder and communication qualifications. For me, actually going back to the sort of tenets of research and being curious and understanding, what the core elements we need to deliver are, what those people that I engage with is also on their agenda. They're, in any program of work, you're the person the most interested in it than anyone else you engage with. So when you engage with different stakeholders, really understanding what's the delta and what's the ability to make it relevant for them. So for me, it's the sort of simple sort of core skills that you'd have of being able to research, being able to analyze. Obviously, public speaking and communicating is critically important. Probably the most overlooked skill I think that people early in their career sort of don't tap into is the ability to take a complicated or complex idea and synthesize it down into something quite simple. I know we always hear about that notion of an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is much more important the further up and the more senior you get in any organization, because always the people who are more senior than you have less time than you. They've got many more emails, many more meetings, a lot more demands, and a lot more context switching between different things. So if you're able to, it's something that's really worthwhile practicing. What I talk to some of my team members about, of the ability to zoom in and zoom out. So how do you zoom very into the detail on ideas and be able to understand how all the parts fit together, but also then zoom out and say, what would be the 3 key ideas you need to get across, and how would you get that across to someone very senior in a minute or two? And that's a real skill in itself, because a lot of times people who have a technical background, they do struggle with that so what factor and making it real for people in those senior leadership levels. I think for me, any opportunities that people can take for public speaking or for presenting or for selling their ideas is so important, because there's so much complexity, there's so much noise in industry. It's about your ability to cut through.
So, do you have any suggestions for individuals to improve their communication skills or public speaking skills, which seem to be important part of what you are currently doing? So, if you could give some advice, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's always the track of kind of the public speaking associations and Toastmasters and those types of things. And I know people who've done that and found that extremely helpful. I haven't done that myself. What I've more looked at is, who are people that I look at and go, wow, they're really good at what they do, or they are really easily able to get their message across and really clearly present. And in a lot of instances, those people are comfortable and happy to share their experience. So early in my career, I was always comfortable to reach out to those sort of people and say, can I buy you a coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Can we have a conversation? Because I've seen you present, I've seen you engage. Here's some of the things that I think you're doing, of how you're getting your message across, but am I right or wrong? And in a lot of instances, it's funny, because sometimes people would say, oh, you see someone present really well as a public speaker and go, they just must naturally be able to do that. And I've actually found that not to be the case at all. I think even those people who maybe have charisma or are extroverts, they still have a strategy. They still have an approach. They're very clear on what they're trying to do and how they get their message across. And in a lot of instances, people are very generous with their time. If you are generous back with their time. So don't waste their time. Don't just go in and say, tell me how to be a better public speaker. I think it's about how you can show that you've done the work and developed yourself to a point, but what sort of cues that they can help you tap into as well, I think is really critically important. And for me, I've had people reach out and do the same, and people who on their development plan have had sort of public speaking, presenting, lecturing, and always happy to assist and always happy to help. And in a lot of instances, it's usually a couple of small techniques that can actually help them get their message across in a much, much easier way. And, practice makes perfect. Whenever there's an opportunity to do those sort of things, you'll always get better the more you practice and the more you can prepare for and then reflect on it after you've completed it.
For someone who wants to get into regulation or even finance, what would be your suggestions for them to start in this world where AI is taking over a lot of things and you have access to free education? So would you recommend that individuals study or get a university degree to be able to progress in their career and one day be in a position where you are at the moment?
Yeah, I think that the nature of university's probably changed a little bit, and the things that are important have changed. For me, I loved university. So for me, I actually wasn't as strong in school. I was much, much stronger at university when I was able to just focus on the topics that I wanted to focus on, rather than needing to sort of do half the things that I wasn't that interested in. So I think university is a great grounding. I think in terms of your initial question of someone who's looking to get into finance or looking to get into, regulation or auditing or risk management more broadly, it's very much a prerequisite that you do need to have either an undergraduate or a postgraduate degree to go into those spaces. There are also different short courses that you can do as well, which would help you up for things like financial planning or financial advice and the like. But certainly a good grounding in a university degree is always helpful. And for me, it's some of the things that I learned at university right the way across the different courses, like things like economics and the like, that I'll still tap into in my current job, even though my area is actually non-financial risk. So it's always good to have that broad generalist grounding that you can get through a university degree and then really specialize as you go further. So I was fortunate enough to be able to do undergraduate, master's and PhD. So the further through that progression you get, the more specialized you're getting. But in each instance, I found there was a really good ability to leverage the skills that I'd learned before. But if I went back and did my university time again, I might do a different major. But yeah, in hindsight, it's always what's sort of interesting once you've kind of gone through that progression and gone through those steps to to what you kind of reflect on now. So yeah, but definitely value in university still. I think AI is a great tool and a great support, and will continue to be more dominant in some areas than others. And yeah, the future is bright in that space, but certainly something that we still need people who are skilled in foundational areas like law, accounting, economics, commerce, and the like.
So how do you see the future of the industry that you're currently in? Just, based on what we discussed and where the AI is growing and the technology. So where do you see the future of your role or this industry that you're currently in?
Yeah, if I take sort of risk management more broadly, because I think risk management, whether it's in critical infrastructure where I'd come from previously in aviation, or in sort of financial services now, AI is an important tool and one of many tools that we can tap into. Like I would even say what we're doing now in having an engaged conversation or an interview or a focus group is also another important tool that you can build out in the space. So for me, something like AI, it's great for certain tasks and certain jobs. I think it will continue to evolve, obviously, and get more intelligent. But at the moment, for me, it's more of a supporting tool to what people will do, and it really helps on the analytics side. So, for example, even things like in risk management, there's the notion of controls. So you'll put a control in place to help reduce the likelihood or impact of a risk. You previously would need to sort of buy from consultants or start from scratch and build your own control library. Obviously, there's things where AI can give you a really strong head start on those areas now. But again, it's about how you right size it for the specific situation and the specific organization that you're working with. AI, from how I understand some of the work, it'll always aim for the middle. It'll always aim for, with those large language models, what the most prevalent answer is or the most prevalent position is. Sometimes, particularly in risk management, it's those black swan events or those events that we couldn't imagine or we couldn't think of previously, but we need to force ourselves to imagine them and be prepared for them. That can also be so critical and important. And I think there'll always be that human element in that space as well.
In terms of your current role, what are the challenges and what do you see as also reward? So, in terms of your day-to-day job, what do you see as most rewarding or challenging? And how do you think you have successfully been able to overcome those challenges?
For me, in my current role specifically, it's really time management and being protective of my time that's so critically important. There's always more work than people. There's always more work than hours in the day. So actually skills, and this is probably something back that they didn't teach at university, but prioritization, time management, being strict with understanding what needs to be done right away versus just being led by what's at the top of your email inbox is a real skill that you learn over time. It's something I think that you can get better at prioritization, and you can also get better at saying no to things or saying not right now to things. So for me, in my current role, just managing the day to day, it's very much prioritization of my own time, and it's never set and forget. It's always something where there'll be constant back and understand the environment, respond to the environment rather than react to the environment. And for me, the difference is responding is understanding everything's that's on the plate, and then understanding where that priority would fit in. Reacting would simply be whatever the most recent thing is, but we'll focus on that and we'll chase that immediately. But that won't help you achieve those strategic outcomes. I think more broadly to your question in industry, what is changing and what's evolving and what some of the bigger challenges going forward. From a risk management perspective, it's always getting that attention from the business. And in a lot of instances, risk is seen as a cost rather than something that can really help protect and really help be an opportunity for the business. Whenever things don't blow up, you don't really notice risk management. But when they do blow up, you say, where was the risk management team or where was the controls team? So for me, it does become that recency bias of when things are sort of starting to go better in the economy or starting to work well. Sometimes we forget that we need some of those controls in place. So yeah, slightly different challenges, I suppose, on my personal day versus industry, but certainly across both of them, prioritization is absolutely critical.
And in terms of the rewarding aspects of your role, what would you say are the rewarding parts of your role?
I think all my roles over sort of my progression, and even when I was an academic and a researcher at university, working with other people and supporting other people to do better was always the main goal that I would get and the main benefit I'd get. And seeing others around me develop was really, really strong. In my current role at the regulator, it's really great to obviously support financial stability broadly across Australia, which is a real it was a real motivator for me moving out of industry and moving into government. So those types of things, there's a range of different benefits you get working for someone like a regulator that you may not get in industry, but slightly different perspectives. And yeah, just great opportunities always. And sort of back to what I mentioned earlier on, when opportunities come up, looking at them, understanding them, and if it's something that you think will benefit, then say yes to it.
You had an interesting career journey moving into different industries. If there was something about your career journey that you would say that you wanted to change, what would that be?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if I'd change any of it, actually. I think for me, I've always, every job I've moved into, it's not a job that I thought I could do on day one. It's not something where I sort of said, I could 100% do that. I'll be hitting the ground running. It was always for me something that was a stretch and something that I thought this will challenge me. And through challenge, obviously, you'll also develop. And I think it's something that the notion of a development plan and the notion of where you continue to evolve as a team member and an employee, I think is something that some team members sort of think it's the job of the manager, but it's actually your job yourself. You need to be across what you need to develop and understand not just the sorts of courses and the learning you need to do, but also the situations you need to put yourself in, the types of leaders you want to work with, the types of projects you want to work on. That's really where you'll get the most benefit and you'll really continue to evolve and improve through that practice. So for me, I think it's something where I've been fortunate that I've had a number of those opportunities come up, but also, a good grounding in the academic side, but then the opportunity, I think, to quickly identify what were the skills that I had that were transferable and take them across, even though I couldn't necessarily do the job on day one.
If you can also provide an advice to our audience in terms of choosing their career path, that would be great.
I think I've had a range of good advice over the time. And in a lot of instances, what I would say is don't wait for advice to come to you. Actually seek out those leaders that you respect. And in a lot of instances, they're more than happy to discuss ideas, to whiteboard things, to put trust in them as much as they put trust in you, and actually share what your thoughts are and what your ideas are, and work through those sorts of different things. I think for me, that's been really helpful. Be reflective. For me, and it's a piece of advice that I've given team members before, in any instance, even when things are going poorly in particular projects or in particular BAU items, it's always a learning opportunity. And for me, with team members, when they come to me and if they've been frustrated on something, I say, well, why is that frustrating? It's not just 100% what the other team or the other stakeholder is doing. There's always going to be things that we are doing or that we could do differently. So I kind of say, think about it like it's a video game almost, and you're controlling the character. So take the emotion out of it, sit out of the situation and say, what are the things that you could have done differently or could have shifted and adjusted to avoid where we are now, but also to help us sort of work our way out of this situation. So the notion of a post-incident review or a reflective kind of practice and what role did you play in something, I think is really, really powerful as well. And again, it's not a skill that typically they'll sort of walk through at university and teach you how to do. It's something that over time, I'd always observed really good leaders would, when people were getting the most intense and people were getting the most anxious or emotive, they would slow the situations down. They would say, let's try and take the emotion out of it and let's look at right back to the notion of the elevator pitch. What are the 2-3 things we can achieve here? What can we control at the moment? And what are the sorts of things that we need to move further down the road and worry about at a different stage? But certainly from the advice side, don't be afraid to ask advice and to engage with those that you trust.
That's a great advice, and I really like that. And what you just mentioned about frustration and being reflective. You obviously manage a big team, and I would be interested to know when you have a big team, different people with different personalities. Of course, there are challenges, and some may not be motivated enough, or some may get a bit, disappointed, and everything else that happens in a workplace. I would be interested to know how would you manage different personality and enable the team to work collaboratively together?
Look, I was lucky enough when I was much younger to be in some really high performing sports teams and actually represent my state and my country in my chosen sport. And one of the things that I learned very early on through that experience is, for example, if it was something like soccer or football, you're not going to make your striker the goalkeeper and vice versa. You're going to take the skills and the capabilities that people have in certain areas, and you're going to naturally fit them into what position that they play in the team. But you can also stretch people over time and give them opportunities to cross skill and learn. And in a lot of instances, I find when there is conflict within the team or when there is challenges within the team, in the majority of instances, it's purely a misunderstanding. But sometimes people will think, wow, that's intentional. But you have to remember the other person doesn't understand the situation the same way that you do. So I think in all those instances, again, to what I mentioned about good leadership, it's about slowing things down, seeing things from other people's perspective. And really, in some instances, you need to bring people together. But it's twofold. It's not just coming to bring them together to say, well, I'm the leader and I will solve this problem for you. In a lot of instances, it's about setting the scaffolding, asking some challenging questions, and then saying, those who've been in conflict, okay, you're going to go away and you're going to come back with the solution to this because you're all close to it. But obviously take some of that sort of recency and emotion out of the situation as well. So I actually use the same tactics sometimes with my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old when they're fighting as well, to kind of say, how can we slow down and get to a point where we're all friends again? Sometimes the same thing actually works in business teams.
Last question. Is there a book, podcast, any sort of resources that you would recommend to the audience, especially those who are just, getting out of school and trying to make up their mind about the steps they need to take into their career journey?
Sure. For me, a podcast that I really enjoy listening to, usually more in kind of the history and leadership space, typically. And there's a gentleman by the name of Sean Ryan, who was a previous United States Special Forces team member, and he has a lot of really interesting guests on his show from, yes, the military side, but also from Silicon Valley and from politics, from medicine, from a range of different areas. And it's really interesting to just listen to how different people who've achieved, high performance within their teams, how they approach it. And it's always that instance where it might just be one or two things that you pick up from those people who are kind of at the apex of their career. But those one or two things over time really make a big difference. So, I always like sort of those sort of leadership style, but also things like history as well. If you don't know your history, you're destined to repeat it. So it's always really important to have as much breadth of understanding of those sorts of matters as possible, I think.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure the audience will find this very beneficial and useful. You shared some information, not just for the younger generation, but also for professionals as well, where you shared about your leadership experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you.